Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. Welcome back to our series. And in the last episode, episode 0, we began where all geometry begins, with 0, with nothing, with the circle, with the monad, with the profound and ancient understanding that 0 is not the absence of something, but the apparent emptiness from which everything emerges. It's like the ground from which life force arises. And we ended that episode with a promise. 4 faces, 4 vertices, 6 edges. The tetrahedron is waiting, is what I said. So here we are. But before we meet it properly, let me ask you something. What is the least number of points you need to define a space? Not a line, not a flat surface, an actual space, a contained space, something we could call a volume, something that's got more than 2 dimensions, not an angled set of lines with only length and breadth or width, not a circle with only a diameter and a circumference, but something that has depth as well as length and width. Something that has depth as well as circularity. Take a moment with that. Just feel into the question for a minute. Because 1 point is a dot, a location, pure potential. 2 points can give you a line from one to the other, and that is direction. It's considered to be relationship between 2 things. 3 points, and now something extraordinary happens. 3 points, none of them on the same line, give you a flat surface, a triangle, an area, 2 dimensions. But we don't live in 2 dimensions. We live in 3 or more. And to get to 3 dimensions, you get to actual volume, actual space, actual depth. You need 1 more point. That's the minimum. A 4th, one that sits above or below that triangle, off the flat plane entirely. 1 point that lifts the whole thing into space. Altogether, 4 points. That's the minimum. That's the irreducible least, the 4 points, and you have the simplest volume that can exist in 3-dimensional space. You have a triangle, 3 points, that with the addition of a 4th point becomes 3-dimensional. That 4th point in 3D is the tetrahedron. I invite you to really sit with what that means for a moment, because it's extraordinary when you kind of really let it land. 3 points can describe a surface, but a surface has no depth. It's got no inside, no outside, no volume. In a sense, it's a boundary without a container. The moment that 4th point appears, lifted off the plane, reaching into a 3rd dimension, everything changes. Suddenly, there's an inside, there's a depth, and now we have a new possibility of something that can be contained, protected, held. So, in that sense, 4 is considered to be the number of manifestation. Things become real in space. The movement from an idea into a form, and the tetrahedron is its first geometric expression. And in the ancient elemental traditions, these are traditions that long preceded the Western scientific methods that have grown out of the last 4 centuries. These are traditions that understood nature's patterns through direct observation and profound symbolic and somatic awareness. And for them, the tetrahedron was associated with fire. Now, not fire as destruction. You might think of it as being something dangerous. But fire is elemental, as a great symbol of transformation. And think about what fire actually does. It doesn't simply consume. It transforms. It takes one thing and makes it into another. Matter changes state. So, for example, fire can heat solid ice and transform it into water, and then transform water and change it from a liquid to a vapour. One substance, three states, one transformative force moving through all of them. And 4, the number of the tetrahedron, is the number of transformation in ancient symbolic mathematics. So we began to explore this in episode 0. And I mentioned in that episode Michael Schneider and his beautiful articulation of archetypal numbers. And 4 is where we arrive at the next dimension, from area to volume at depth for the first time. 3 points define a flat surface, but it takes a 4th to reveal depth, to step from the realm of surface into the realm of space. That is itself considered a transformation, a fundamental change of state from 2 dimensions into 3, through the 4th point in the story. So the tetrahedron forms the geometric moment of transformation. Let me describe it to you simply and precisely so that you can really get it clearly in your mind. The tetrahedron is the regular polyhedral shape defined by having 4 equal faces. Every single one of them is an equilateral triangle, a triangle where all 3 sides are equal in length, and all 3 angles are exactly 60 degrees. 4 vertices, the points where the faces meet, and 6 edges, the lines connecting those points. And here is something worth pausing on as we consider this, the first of the 5 regular polyhedrons. Every edge in a tetrahedron is exactly the same length. Every face is exactly the same shape. Every vertex is identical to every other vertex. There's no hierarchy here. There's no top that's different from the base, no dominant face. It is, in the most precise sense of the word, regular. And that regularity, that perfect, complete internal consistency, is what makes it or qualifies it to be a Platonic volume. You can hold a tetrahedron in your hand and turn it in any direction and it would look the same, because it is the same in every direction. And that, in nature, is a very unusual thing. So what does it have to do with the living body? Funnily enough, everything. And I want to take you there carefully because this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. We've talked before in previous episodes about tensegrity, about the way living structures organise themselves, not through rigid compression of stacked things, not through levers and pin joints as if we were made of wood or puppets, but through the dynamic interplay of tension and compression distributed continuously throughout the whole architecture. Now, the tetrahedron is foundational to tensegrity architecture. When you build a tensegrity mast, one of those extraordinary structures where compression elements float within a continuous web of tension, great big huge, continuous web of tension, the basic unit, the irreducible module from which those masts are built is tetrahedral. 4 points in space. Those 4 points in space are held in relationship by the geometry itself rather than by rigid connection. They are, in a sense, its most rudimentary foundation. Kenneth Snelson is the artist and sculptor who distinguished what became known as tensegrity. It actually expresses at the next dimension. But first, let's start with the tetrahedron. Kenneth Snelson understood it profoundly. He was a student of Buckminster Fuller, the architect famous for creating geodesic domes, who recognised the significance of something called triangulation. Remember, the tetrahedron is made up of equilateral triangles. but there aren't 3 of them, there's 4. And we're going to meet both Buckminster Fuller and Kenneth Snelson properly in series 2 about sacred geometry, because it's really worth going into their work. But for now, in this episode, just hold this. The tetrahedron is the minimum geometry of structural integrity in 3-dimensional space. It is the simplest form in which tension and compression can be distributed, poised in balance without collapse. And that is the beginning. It's not the whole story, but it's the beginning of everything structural in nature. And for those of you that asked me to go through each of the Platonic volumes, that's what we're doing here. And we're understanding the tetrahedron as a foundation. But what's that got to do with the body? Well, the law of 3 is something I talk about a lot in other episodes. And I just want you to think about collagen. The triple helix, the 3 threads helically bound together at approximately 60-degree angles, which is exactly the internal angle of the equilateral triangle, the face of the tetrahedron. Now, the tetrahedron is a solid model, and this is soft matter, not hard matter, but we'll make those links later in the series. But notably, nothing in the human body is set at 90 degrees, as you might expect from a mechanical or a right-angled engineering model, even though we talk about the human body as if it's based on biomechanics and right angles and stacked forms. It isn't. There are no right angles in the living body. Collagen has 3 key aspects. Each point sits at 60 degrees. It is triangulated, and it is actually tetrahedral in its most fundamental organisation. Now, a right angle exists in a cube, but the body does not build itself on the logic of the cube. It isn't based anywhere on the right angle, the straight line, or the 90-degree corner. We're going to meet the cube, the hexahedron, in episode 2, where we're going to explore the geometry of the next of our 5 Platonic volumes, the hexahedron, the second in this story of regular polyhedral shapes. The tetrahedron comes first, and it comes first because triangulation is the basis of structural integrity in soft matter. And you and I and every living creature on this planet are based in soft matter physics. Now, there's more to it than a simple triangle, but let's consider that a triangle cannot be deformed without changing the length of its sides. It is, of all the 2-dimensional shapes, the only one that is inherently stable in its form. Every other polygon, squares, pentagons, hexagons, can be distorted, pushed out of shape, while keeping its side lengths the same. But the triangle holds. The tetrahedron, 4 triangles combined into a volume, carries that integrity into 3 dimensions. And there's something else I want to bring in here, something that I find deeply moving, and it connects the geometry to the living body in a way that goes beyond structure into a kind of deeper symbolism and meaning. And that's the chakra system, which we will explore in full depth in series 3. The number 4 corresponds to the Anahata chakra, the heart chakra. And its yantra, its geometric symbol, is 2 interlacing triangles forming a 6-pointed star, a star tetrahedron in 3 dimensions. That's 2 tetrahedrons combined, one pointing upward, one pointing downward, interpenetrating. Now, this symbol is sometimes called geometria, a word that closely expresses the root of the word geometry itself. Geo means earth, metria means measure, and then that comes from mater, meaning mother. So geometry is the measure of Mother Earth, the Gaia mater. The geometria is the geometry of the heart. Now, I'm not asking you to take this as literal anatomy. I'm asking you, inviting you to notice something, that the ancient symbolic traditions placed the geometry of the tetrahedron, the geometry of transformation, of fire, of the movement from surface into volume at the level of the heart. The place in the body that's associated with love, with relationship, with the capacity to be changed by another. Transformation. Fire. The heart. These are not random associations. They really are a kind of coherent language of a symbolic mathematics that understood long before modern biology that certain forms carry certain qualities. They're not just quantifiable, they qualify, and those qualities are expressed throughout nature at every scale, including in us. There is more to our somatic responses and our somatic shapes than perhaps we realise. And it's fascinating to learn, and we're going to return to this in later episodes, because in the human embryological sequence, the heart actually begins above the crown. It feeds the growing brain, and that growth essentially rounds the heart down to its position at the fourth chakra in the round, embryologically. And it's a key in the design and organisation of the whole body, always, always in the round. And the heart itself is formed from a tube that spirals and folds to create 4 chambers, settling into its position at the centre of every human being's organisation. And the more we delve into the ancient symbolism of the Anahata, the more we discover resonances with what the tetrahedron expresses. And the more those resonances feel less like coincidence and more like a sort of coherent somatic language describing the same truth from all sorts of different directions. Remember, it begins with the tetrahedron, and with its mathematical precision and ancient symbolic resonance, the tetrahedron is not abstract or purely theoretical. It's actually happening in your body right now. Every time a collagen fibril forms, it forms in what we call triangulated organisation. Every time a tensegral structure distributes load with every step you take, that's happening continuously throughout your fascia in every moment as you sit or stand or breathe or get up or sit down, it's doing so through the principle the tetrahedron expresses. What makes it possible for us to move through gravity or move over the ground in response to the world around us is the continuous distribution of force through triangulated geometry of our form. There are no levers in nonlinear biologic forms. None. There are only location-specific architectures that carry force, distribute load, and allow our intentions to become movement and move us while we're intending. It's the definition of being alive, right? As we go deeper into the expression of the tetrahedron, which is the beginning, it's not the whole, it's the beginning, that represents fire and transformation, it becomes possible to understand this element as representative of how fascia forms in the human body. We have to start thinking symbolically, not just literally. And that doesn't give us a license to make it up. It gives us the opportunity to recognize why the fascia is a transforming tissue. It's not fixed. It's not a static scaffolding. It's responsive. It responds. It's adaptive. It adapts. It's changing constantly. It changes when you move. The fascial matrix shifts its geometry all the time. When you breathe, it shifts. When you are afraid or held or hurt, it shifts throughout. It communicates forces transmitting throughout you. And when safety returns, when you are touched well, moved well, breathed well, it shifts again. That continuing capacity for transformation on every scale, moment by moment, movement by movement, to change state while remaining coherent. That capacity for being altered by relationship and returning toward a new form of wholeness. That's what fire does. That is what the tetrahedron represents. And it is, I would suggest, the deepest thing to consider about the living body. Not that it's stable, not that it is mechanical, but that it transforms constantly. It's what we do. It's who and how we are. And before we close, I just want to leave you with something to carry into your body rather than just your mind. Notice right now the triangles in your structure. You might think of your sitting bones and think of them as being triangulated as you rock your pelvis with the front and the back, the coccyx and the pubic bone. If you're seated, you could think of your shoulder blades. Each one of those is triangular, but they also form either side of the base of your neck, a kind of a triangle. Your sacrum is triangular. These are not coincidences of anatomy. They're expressions of the principle of shape being so important. It's what's called morphology, and it is always archetypal. So there's an archetype to the shape as well as the person, many in fact. And triangulation is the basis of our structural integrity, which we'll look at more later. But let's first know the tetrahedron as the geometry of form in space, the first iteration. And in some ways, you could consider this that you are, in a very real and precise sense, built from fire, from the transforming, irreducible minimum geometry of three-dimensional space. 4 points held in relationship is where you begin. 4 points describing triangles in 3D. You always have to be at the next level to contain the one below. So 3 needs 4 points to be. In our next episode, we meet the second of the 5 Platonic volumes, the hexahedron, the cube, the geometry of earth, of stability, of the form that fills space without leaving gaps. After fire, ground. I'll see you there.